In 1999, Morpheus offered Neo a choice between a red pill and a blue pill. In 2018, this country fractured between red and blue. In 2022, I'm here to tell you that if you really want the truth, more voters are neither red or blue. Yet, they have no representation, no choice, and no options. They have to choose between candidates chosen by the red people or the blue people. I'm David Esrati, and I'm running for Congress as an American, as in red, white, and blue. I'm a veteran, an activist, and a small businessman. I'm asking you to join me in reminding the professional politicians in Congress who their bosses are. I support ranked choice voting, campaign finance reform, and a verified voter information system, all so we can stop having the best politicians money can buy. It's time to elect a veteran who will work for you, no matter what color they want to label you. Please go to electesrati.com and learn more. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Jurassic Park, you thought those little baby dinosaurs were cute until they turned into out-of-control carnivores. That's sort of what happens to government when we elect people based on very expensive advertising campaigns and propaganda. I'm David Esrati. I'm a veteran and a small businessman running for Congress. You don't want professional ad people and pollsters to sway your vote. All those hot-button issues like gun control, abortion, borders are all politicized to stop you from voting rationally. And thinking rationally seems to be in short supply these days. Most Americans have been voting against their own best self-interest for a long time because we've allowed money to buy our leaders. 1 million Americans died in the last 2 years because our leaders couldn't lead. It wasn't that hard. Mask, distance, test, and then vaccinate. In an instant, we had billions to spend on healthcare for COVID, when for years we've been told we can't provide healthcare for everyone equally in this country. That's an unintended consequence of the pandemic. If you think about it, our government can pretty much do whatever it wants, or what the people who buy our politicians tell our leaders to do. We also had a ton of money to prop up businesses. The next thing you know, it turns out that a living wage was not only possible, but necessary. As a small businessman who won't sell you out to corporate interests and lobbyists, I can tell you that it's time to fully understand the consequences of companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Google and their effect on small business, and to remind you that small business is the #1 creator of jobs in this country. So this next election, don't trust this ad or any other political ad. Do your homework and think before you vote. It's time to put this ad man in Congress because I know that the best advertising is based on the truth, not the size of the budget or payola. Or you can just vote based on who has the money to buy their way into Congress and live with the consequences. I'm David Esrati. Hi, I'm David Esrati. I'm running for Congress in OH-10, which is now all of Montgomery County, all of Greene County, and parts of Clark County. My opponent is Mike Turner, who never shows up at any of the candidates' events or candidates' nights or debates or anything else. He hasn't had a town hall in 20 years. And that's why I have this daily town hall, 4 o'clock, weekdays, where you and I can interact. And that's what we'll do. You already see there's been one comment in from Matt Doc Truman, and he has a podcast that he runs, a video podcast he runs on Sunday nights at 9:45, I believe. And I'm going to be on there this week. Haven't had a chance to really watch, but we'll make it happen. So, even though that's kind of close to past my bedtime. So, what we're going to talk about today, is sort of a continuation of yesterday, because I was talking about questions from the audience. And last night I was at the Greater Dayton Real Estate Investors Association meeting, and we got lots of questions about taxation and, valuation and all kinds of things. And there were some really bizarre answers from the politicians, not from me. unfortunately, because the way they do things, I just had to leave the camera wide, and you're going to have to watch the whole thing. I think we've got it uploading to YouTube. And, but the answers you get from politicians are not answers that make sense. Like, why can all these other counties do their Section 8 and, reviews so quickly and Montgomery County can't? Well, part of the problem is Montgomery County has a lot more poor people than the surrounding counties. That's number one. Number two, Montgomery County has a lot more slumlords because, frankly, in Dayton, almost anything will go. Number three, Montgomery County is run by the monarchy of Montgomery County, and we have to make sure the friends and family all have positions. So if you just look down who the board members are of Greater Dayton Premier Management, you can understand that they're just appointing people to keep people happy, not to make sure that the organization is well run or anything else. Honestly, it's kind of pathetic, but that's how things run in Montgomery County. And I was sitting right next to Phil Plummer, the chair of the Republican Party, former sheriff who was good at torturing people in his jail, though he says pepper spray is nothing. I'll even take pepper spray to the face. I'm ready to put him up to that. But he said the first person that was wrong, she was fired. No, she was put on administrative leave for a year, promoted, and then retired after another year on medical retirement. That's not exactly fired, Phil. He said the other people were fired. Well, that's not what I hear. And he said the other guy, his hands were loose. He was in a restraint chair with his legs bound, his waist bound, and they had leaned him forward because the cuffs were too tight and we're going to switch it. Then they sprayed him in the face. His hands went up to his face and they sprayed him again, Phil. No, that's called torture. There were 5 deputies. He'd been patted down. He was no threat to anybody. No need for pepper spray. They don't understand de-escalation at all. But Phil and I can get along just fine because Phil claims that he's okay with one of the solutions I said, which was Unigov. The reason our taxes are so high is we have 18 school superintendents. We have 18 school treasurers. We got 18 school boards. This is just Montgomery County. One school board, one district, has 240 students. That's Jefferson, by the way. 240 students, and they have a superintendent and a treasurer and a board of... Why? 240 students isn't even an elementary school. That should be forced to either join Valley View, join Dayton, join Trotwood, something. But having a school district with 242 kids and having reason to pay somebody like Craig Jones ungodly money to be the treasurer is a joke. That just has to stop. The state of Ohio has 1,618 school districts for 88 counties. We used to have county-wide school boards. We don't anymore. Instead, we've got educational service centers, which cost us millions, and nobody can vote any oversight over these organizations because guess what? They designed it that way. And who's on those? Who works for the Montgomery County Educational Service Center? All the retired superintendents. So they were making $200,000 a year. They retired. They're making $100,000 a year plus their retirement, and they barely work. That has to stop. So I told people, I said flat out, I mean, you got to keep all these jobs for the friends and family of the parties. They got a deal worked where the judges don't ever have to run for re-election. Once they're elected, they're good for life. We've got the prosecutor never gets challenged. The sheriff never gets challenged. It's a deal between the parties. And they leave all the rest of us out. And the Board of Elections is run by the two parties. And remember, these people are in the minority because more people are unclassified or don't want anything to do with either the Democrats or the Republicans because, frankly, they both suck. They suck bad, at least here in Montgomery County. It's all about friends and family. That's it. Nothing else. So we started talking about some things like economic development, and somewhere, Phil's like, everything's on the move forward in Ohio, and so was Andrea White. She was all in, and so was the guy who give a weed an inch, it'll take a yard. All three of them. That's Rodney Creech, by the way. So those three, they're all like, we're on the right track. We got intel coming. No, we're paying for intel to come here. It's like paying for your date to the prom. Okay, you buy the ticket, then you have to buy her prom dress. You have to buy her dinner. You have to buy her a bouquet, and she doesn't even want to go with you, so you have to pay her money to go. That's not what government is supposed to do, okay? We paid $1 billion, right? That was our ante. State of New York just tossed at Micron to go up in Ithaca, New York. They pledged like $10 billion, and it's a race. That's how we lost NCR, folks. Your tax dollars are not there to subsidize private business. I don't care if the Chinese subsidize things or have cheap labor. There's a simple solution. There's a simple solution to that. They're called tariffs. And actually, I agree with Trump. He raised the tariffs on them. The problem is he also hasn't enforced antitrust. No one has enforced antitrust. And we basically have a monopoly of 3 companies that are controlling all the shipping from China to here. 3 companies, and they're jacking the prices up. Guess who owns 95% of the containers? The Chinese. They're jacking the prices up. This is why we broke up the steel industry. This is why we broke up the telephone systems, and then we're allowing them to grow back together. You know, we had the baby bells. We turned it into 7 different utilities, and then now we're back to AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. And T-Mobile's the Germans. That's Deutsche Telekom, in case you didn't know. And they bought Sprint, which was owned by the Japanese. So, we pay more for cell service. We pay more for internet access because these are allowed to operate with government support with no competition. The deregulation of energy costs, now we're seeing, let's go and aggregate our buying power. It doesn't matter, folks. They're still paying the CEOs millions of dollars to run monopolies. That makes no sense at all. If you want to know an industry that needs to be switched over to not-for-profit, it should be electric delivery, it should be gas delivery, it should be internet delivery, telephone delivery, and there should be limits on the pay and the compensation of the executives that are making the decision, because right now, you're paying out the wazoo. That's right, wazoo. So, anyway, we had them, they're saying, oh, we're all excited about Intel. I'm like, I'm excited about Intel too. It's great we're bringing jobs here. But do you know how many sites there are that are already built, that had manufacturing in Ohio, that could have been restructured, rebuilt, that are within the city core, where there are jobs, where there's public transportation, where there's sewer lines, there's water lines, there's electric already run, there's internet, all those things? There are tons of them. Okay? They exist. They are all over the place. And guess what? We're not going to do that. They're going to take up in New Albany out in the cornfields, far away from workers, far away from public transit, far away from where they have to run all new utilities, where they're going to have to build new highways for all the traffic. It's just like putting all those warehouses out by the airport. All of a sudden, 40 is just, National Road is getting overwhelmed with trucks. It wasn't built for that. This is the problem of government-sponsored economic development. We had the McCall plant, which had lots of space for lots of industrial plants. It was a huge plant. It's right on 35. You could take down a whole bunch of wrecked out houses and continue that all along there. There are people that could walk to work that need the jobs. They have direct access to the highway. There's rail access, everything right through that corridor. No, we built them at the airport. And we incentivized them. And we gave them tax breaks. And so you wonder why your taxes go up, your property taxes? So the property taxes go up because we have to pay for infrastructure, folks. It costs to have those roads. It costs to have police to go out and service those roads. You know, the growth of the community. There is a cost of overhead of economic development that politicians don't acknowledge. They don't think about. Never mind the fact that once you put a chip plant in the middle of a cornfield, people go hungry, bow, bow, bow. Let's quote the Blues Brothers. What do you have when you have a wish sandwich? You have 2 slices of bread and you wish you had some meat, right? There is no meat in building a chip plant out in a cornfield. That is just pure stupidity. And the state of Ohio is going through with it. And there's nothing I can do about it. We need to have much smarter development, redevelopment. We need to look at where people are living, where the services are, and how to get the jobs close to them, not out in the outskirts. So when I talked about antitrust, the genius in the front, who was also the timekeeper, said, hey, that's socialism. No, that is not socialism. Making sure that there is competition is not socialism. I said, you want to know why inflation, that no one's willing to talk about? It's that anytime they want, Amazon can raise the prices of all their products. Google can charge more to small businesses to advertise their products. It just happened to a client of mine. They just raised the cost per click, and his business dropped off because we had a max bid set and we had to raise it. So we get to spend more to get less, and nobody's sitting there saying, hey, you guys are contributing to this, because the people in Congress don't know how much a gallon of milk costs. They don't know how much anything costs. They don't know how technology works. All they know how to do is get money from billionaires, because that's who's funding their campaigns. So, again, economic development is code word for state-sponsored tax breaks for rich people. It isn't actually doing what it's supposed to do. In fact, if we had our druthers, all businesses would be taxed the same. All jobs would be given the same benefits, because we'd have national health care, and it wouldn't be a competition between private entities where bigger companies have more leverage against the smaller companies in getting health care. We could solve some of these things. It will be painful to make the switch into a system that actually works for the people. But as I said, in the last 20 years, the only thing that they've done economically that really has an amazing effect and is easy to see is, since Mike Turner took office, we started out with 300 billionaires in this country, and now we have over 600 in 20 years. You go 20 years before that, there weren't that many billionaires. And you go 40 back, there are just a few. You guys have all played Monopoly. And I should have brought this up at the Real Estate Investors Association meeting, because they understand this, okay? You cannot win Monopoly if you only own the cheap properties. You can't do it, okay? Even if you have 4 houses on those cheap properties, you cannot win. It's about getting Park Place and getting a hotel on it and cleaning out other people's pockets. And once you clean their pockets out, they're done. The game stops. And that's what's been happening. We can't continue this economic miracle that is the United States. It provides opportunity for everybody if just a few people figure out how to take all the monopoly money away. Do you understand that? Your tax dollars are there to support things like defense. Your tax dollars are there to support things like building roads, making sure we have safe water, safe food, safe drugs. We regulate things that are important, right? They are not there to make billionaires richer, but that's what we've been doing a great job of. By the way, this is interactive, okay? So if you got a question or you want something answered, go ahead, tap in on YouTube. I can even see comments on Facebook now. So either, if you're watching either one, feel free to say something, ask a question, and I will respond. This is the difference between me and Mike Turner. Mike Turner doesn't interact with people. He has people to do that. And I've asked multiple times to debate him, and no response. So I'm looking for questions. I'm also looking to see what time it is, and we're still sort of within the limits. But we can talk about economic development projects in this community that went south, okay? Where we put a lot of money in and didn't get much back. It's happened over and over and over. Okay, this is not a first. Let's talk about my favorite hole in the ground on Ludlow, where the city of Dayton gave a couple million to a company called Student Suites LLC from Indiana. And then they tore down both the old Dayton Daily News building, leaving the Cox estate, but they screwed up the Cox mansion, the Cox Tower part, the original part. They screwed up and tore down off part of the back of it, so they had to take the whole back off. So that building's sitting there. They made this huge hole. They took down this beautiful Schwinn building, and then we end up with a grassy lot. We never went after them to get the millions of dollars we gave them, and we never prosecuted anybody for having the money disappear. I see Darby has asked that Mike Turner is already planning political events for 2025, assuming he will. It's not 2025 he'll be running, Darby. He'll be running again in 2024. That's how this works. It's 2 years. So, but he could think he's going to run for president. Who knows? He thinks an awful lot of himself. Anyways, I saw as I was coming back from shooting a commercial for a joint effort with a bunch of candidates, I saw some guys walking out of the Turner offices in the Liberty Tower Bank building with just armfuls of signs to go out and stick in everybody's yards because, believe it or not, Mike's got a system. The Democratic Party does not have a system. I often say to people that what's the difference between the Boy Scouts and the Democrats? The Boy Scouts have adult leadership. There you have it. So, that's an old Army joke. We used to say that about the Army. What's the difference between the Boy Scouts and the Army? The Boy Scouts have adult leadership, but politics makes it a whole new game. So, again, we've got the hole in the ground to Student Suites. That's one thing that went horribly wrong. We can look out at some of the money that was invested by the Dayton Development Coalition in companies like Cubase, where a bunch of the people that worked there all gave money to Steve Austria all at the same time. Yeah, Mike Turner's always assuming he's going to win Darby. It's not. We'll see what happens. Anyways, the whole shenanigans out at Wright State where $130 million went missing, a lot of that was attempts at buying government contracts and providing services to the government when, in fact, they were supposed to be dollars to teach kids and keep college costs reasonable. But nobody goes trouble for that. I could think of others, but I can guarantee you this. They put the new economy linen plant over there on the old McCall site, and I almost guarantee Sinclair will get the old economy linen plant real cheap for future expansion. They'll also probably get the old Dayton Daily News site for future expansion. That's the way things roll. And when we're talking about why are our taxes so high, well, we've been paying for Sinclair Community College for like 53, 54 years. Greene County hasn't. Warren County hasn't. But they have services real close to them. And in Warren County, they actually have a whole campus. And they haven't paid a dime in taxes. That's why I have a site called Keep Sinclair Fair. And I've tried to run campaigns against the levies, which Steve Johnson really doesn't like me for. But the reality is, you just double the tuition of your students. It doesn't come close, not close, to what the money is that we've invested in all the other stuff it takes to run a university. We're subsidizing other communities. And Sinclair is the only college in the state of Ohio that is totally debt-free and has money in the bank. You're paying for it. So, with all that said, you have things that you decide to pay for in terms of levies. You pay for the Human Services Levy, which provides some amazing services in Montgomery County that you can't get in other counties for seniors. You have the Library Levy, which built us all these beautiful new libraries at a really high price that you're not allowed to go and take pictures in. Or if you do, you get thrown out. We pay for Metro Parks. And Metro Parks does a really great job of managing the natural type parks, but Parks and Recs, every city has their own. We haven't got an integrated system. We haven't figured out how to make youth leagues that are, countywide. for sports like soccer or football or any of the rest of it. So there's a lot of room for consolidating and pulling that together. But you pay for metro parks. You pay for, in Dayton, things like the new street lights, which still haven't gone up. You pay for police levies. You pay for school levies. And the school levies keep going up. And there was a discussion last night of why are they still unconstitutional, even though in 1999, the Supreme Court said this is unconstitutional. The State House has done nothing. That's because you've got Republicans running the State House who ignored the Supreme Court, as they did with the Redistricting Commission. So there are a whole lot of reasons you pay a whole lot of taxes in Ohio, and specifically in Montgomery County, that just shouldn't happen. Okay? There are some ways to solve this, and I've got a site called reconstructingdayton.org and a 501c4 that goes with it to eventually move us towards Unigov. That is the goal. So we don't have 6 court websites. We don't have, 30 municipalities putting up websites, 30 municipalities collecting taxes differently, and all this confusion that comes with having all these banana republics that are tiny. I mean, seriously, tiny. Moraine, Oakwood, 6,000 people each, and they have the whole kit and caboodle. You're never going to get Oakwood to agree to it. But I often say if Kettering was the largest central city in this region, and the way it's run, it would be a lot easier to sell Unigov than with what happens when Dayton is the largest city. All right, it is getting around that time. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, last day of the week, and we'll have another subject. If you got any questions or things you'd like to talk about, make sure you put them in comments on this post. I see all those comments and everything. There are new events up on the event schedule for the week following this week. This weekend, I'm going to try to be out at the Yellow Springs Street Fair quite a bit. We'll see what happens. I've still got some other things I've got to take care of. We've still got all those amazing shirts for sale, which are a way of raising funds. Donations, any of those, you buy those, you donate, you get a chance to win a Shepherd Ferry t-shirt, Shepherd Ferry print, framed by Custom Frame Services. That in itself should be an incentive. Go over to electusriot.com/donate and give me some bucks. Make it happen. Okay? Doesn't matter. If you haven't checked out my stump speech from the Tea Party meeting on Monday night, it's 5 minutes long. People said it was amazing. Check that out. Check out my rap. It's about 5 minutes too. I am not Eminem. I admit it, but you'll enjoy it. I'd like to thank all of you who tuned in, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.